Welcome back. So up to this point, everything we've talked about has been about what happened to you, seeing the blueprint and your shame engine and your overheated nervous system and your survival persona. But now we're going to talk about what you can actually do with all of that. And this is the part, that no one ever taught you, that especially with high achievers. They're usually experts at emotional performance and complete beginners at emotional authenticity. All right, not to shame you with that, but they've learned a persona that looks high achieving emotionally, but the void is evidence that there's disparity there. Okay, so you were trained to manage feelings, to hide them, to outwork them, to intellectualize them and over-explain or explain them or apologize for feelings. But you were never taught how to actually have them, sit with them, feel them, and experience them in a way that heals anything. So I want to start with, the difference. There's a big difference between emotional intelligence and emotional authenticity. Now, emotional intelligence, God bless them, I wouldn't even have this class if they didn't make, the word emotions safe in language. I mean, because when I was growing up, you could never mention that word. Well, now the world is okay with talking about emotions. And so they did a wonderful job normalizing emotions. But it does not give you any emotional intelligence. It's a paradox, unfortunately, because their process is just about understanding and managing emotions in the moment. It's putting a Band-Aid on open heart surgery. Some of it is useful, but it's topographical. I'm losing my voice. But it covers, simple little skills that helps you navigate people and situations. But it's just like what you're doing now with your survival persona. It's like a survival persona intelligence. It's not dealing with the root. First of all, they don't even tell you that all emotions are learned in childhood. There's one sentence in the whole book about maybe you want to think about your sister when you were young, a situation with your sister. That's it. No mention that if you're having any emotional reaction at any time, good or bad, all you're doing is reliving your childhood. Well, that's not emotional intelligence. All right? That's a superficial Band-Aid bubblegum way to deceive people, to keep them in their survival personas and let them keep the void and put another layer on. Look at what I achieved. I'm emotionally intelligent, without having to actually get to the root and feel their emotions. Well, the process I developed, emotional authenticity, is much deeper. It goes to the root because it's about telling the truth about what you feel and using the emotional authenticity questions, which we'll get to, which will show you. You'll see the vast difference between emotional intelligence and emotional authenticity shortly when I walk you through this. And when you use those questions, then you can tell the truth about what you feel and what it means to you and where it came from, especially when that truth doesn't make you look good or sound strong or make everybody else comfortable. So emotional authenticity, we're not being dramatic or, emotionally dumping on people. And it's not about staying stuck or stoic. It's about being honest with yourself. And so before you try to manage anything for anyone else, we learn to manage ourselves first, okay? So why does that matter for the voids that's, in us? Because that void is the backlog of every feeling you've ever swallowed to keep your persona in place. And so it's filled with grief and anger and sadness and loneliness and fear and feeling invisible and taken for granted for never being seen or heard or held. Or being included, and being included by you also. So you've tried to fill that backlog of emotion with more external success. So this is where it changes. Instead of using exterior achievement to run your feelings, you're going to use emotional authenticity to turn towards them. And that's where, that's what starts to actually empty that backlog. So how do we do that without being totally overwhelmed or blowing up your life? Now, I just want to give you like a simple framework that you can start using, nothing too dramatic, very easy to work through. Just think of this as, kind of the basic steps of, the emotional authenticity process. My whole method is much deeper, very expansive, but for this intro class, we're just going to lightly touch on it. All right. And the first step of that is naming what you actually feel. All right. Now, you can go to my website and download a feelings wheel, or just go to Google and keep it with you and ask yourself, what do I feel? All right. Start learning to get what's called granularity and specificity around what you feel. All right. Now, I want you to ask the second question of emotional authenticity. Where in my body do I feel this? Remember your nervous system, how we've been. There's a reason we've been building up to this, because we store all of that emotional trauma in our body. Then ask yourself, what's my earliest memory of having this feeling? And boom, that's where the wall hits. Now you see what I've been saying. You can trace whatever happened in this moment to your earliest moments in childhood that you have a memory of. Now, you may not remember an event, but you'll have a time frame in your body of, I think I was maybe around 5 or 7. That's enough. And so that's your worst day cycle. Now you have the proof that you're reliving the pain of your past against yourself. And your survival persona is stuck in it. And it's taking the pain from the past and putting it on this moment. That's how emotions work. So you've just proved several things to yourself. Yes, I developed, I am stuck in a worst day cycle, many of them. I developed a shame-based survival persona that makes me think this is my personality, but it was just a brilliant survival strategy because of what I went through. Okay? And now we're going to start working, now that we're into that, we're going to start working with the 4 pillars of the authentic self cycle: truth, responsibility, healing, and forgiveness. We just opened up truth by those 3 questions. You can see your whole life has been run by your worst day cycle and your survival persona. So you're going to start by naming what you feel. Then, after you use the 3 questions, you're going to ask yourself, what story or rule is attached to that feeling? What did you learn in that moment? And then you're going to use the authentic self process and tell the truth about whether that rule is actually true now. All right? And then you're going to look at, this is how we start to remap and rewire. And, in this class, I'm skipping a lot of the steps, because this is just to give you an idea of what you can expect. If you truly commit yourself to, healing the void. But you're just this is the piece where I give you a taste of what it's like of how to remap and rewire those emotions in childhood that are, still have you feeling the void into something different. And so the next question you're going to ask yourself is, or action you're going to take is, look at that rule you had to develop and pick one tiny action that honors that feeling instead of abandoning it. So let's look at a real life example to bring this all together. All right. Let's say you're at work and you're already overloaded, and your boss or colleague or somebody asks you to take on another project immediately. And your survival persona, of course, jumps in and says, yeah, I'll do it. I'll handle it. But if you slow down for a second and you ask yourself the emotional authenticity questions, what am I feeling? Where in my body do I feel it? What's my earliest memory? Things might look a little different. When you name what you feel and what's underneath that automatic yes, what do you feel? Maybe resentful, anxious, invisible, maybe scared to say no. It's not, I'm fine, or it's no big deal. All right? So look at it and see what's really happening. And now Notice the story or the rule that's attached to that feeling. So it might be something, this is where you start to see the worst day cycle, shame and denial, survival persona pop up and say, if I say no, I'll disappoint them. If I don't carry everything, I'm failing. If I set a boundary, I'm selfish or difficult or whatever it may be. Those are your blueprint rules. And they usually sound like, this is my personality. They're very absolute. And they're usually black and white. Always, never. Have to. There's no gray area. There's no grace in it. All right? So now let's bring in the authentic self process and tell the truth about that rule right now. Ask yourself, is this rule actually true in my adult life today? Or is this old survival rule from my childhood? Maybe the truth is, no, it's not literally true that I'll be abandoned if I say I'm at capacity. Maybe my body actually feels like this because that was the rule way back then. You've just opened the door to emotional authenticity, and you can see emotional intelligence. If you read any of their material, they don't go anywhere near any of that. Now do you see this is real intelligence about what's happening in you emotionally, okay? So as you're doing this, you can see you're not gaslighting yourself or pretending that your feelings aren't real or the fear isn't real. You're actually acknowledging every aspect of it. My body believes this. It believes it because of what happened to me back then. But it's not the truth now. And so then you come in with the last question. Choose one tiny action that honors that feeling instead of abandoning it. So that might look like, okay, I want to do a great job on this, but I'm at capacity, boss. Can we extend the timeline or move somebody, have somebody come in and take this piece off my plate? Or maybe let me think about it and I'll get back to you. I'll let you know by the end of the day so you can work the emotional authenticity method and the authentic self cycle to figure out how you're going to handle all of this. So you stop abandoning yourself, which is what the worst day cycle and survival persona have taught you to do, and all that shame. And you stop it by not giving the automatic yes. And you just take a micro step towards self-loyalty. Well, that's the beginning aspects of emotional authenticity. All right? It doesn't mean you scream or quit or blow everything up or change your whole life. It just means you start by telling yourself the truth about your internal world. And you start looking at your internal world honestly for this first time. And you let that truth have at least the smallest impact on your external choices. And that's how you begin to soften the void. I'll tell you this. One of the greatest feelings I ever had in my life was when I learned to say no for the first time. It was a waitress. And she came up, what does every waitress ask? Do you want a glass of water? And like a mouse, I was so scared. I just said, let me think about it and I'll get back to you. And I was always afraid I was going to get yelled at, screamed at, She just turned away. And man, I just get chills. I was like, yes! Like, I didn't just say yes. I mean, it was a glass of water, big deal. That's what I mean. I started with something small. Something safe, something I knew I wanted. I wanted the water. But I was scared to death, just like what's going on in you. And that was one of the biggest victories of my whole life, even though I so-called accomplished a lot of things externally. That was the day. That was the day my void started to fill up. And when she came back, I said, I thought about it, and I'd like that glass of water. And I kept doing that. Anytime she'd ask me a question, let me think about it. And by the time I left that dinner, I left her a huge tip. Poor girl, I had her, running back and forth. But that changed my life. And it'll change yours. Because every time you do that, you send your nervous system a brand new message. I'm not going to betray you anymore. I'm not going to do it to keep everybody else okay. Now, I might shake like I did or get scared like a little mouse, but I'm going to do it because my feelings count. They count in how I live and they matter. And over time, your body just starts to feel a little less alone. And there's something else that when you do this, I want you to notice. You've probably used your mind to just beat yourself up for years. And you have no problem analyzing yourself to death. Well, emotional authenticity is not about more self-analysis. It's not about shifting the tone from interrogation to curiosity. Instead of, what's wrong with me for feeling like this, it just becomes, what happened to me that makes me, makes this feeling make sense and makes me think this is okay. So instead of, I shouldn't feel this way, it becomes, of course I feel this way. Given what I went through, now that I use the 3 questions before anything and I see, oh my God, I think that's true. I think that's who I am and I got to put up with that. No way. That's not truth. That's not healthy. That's not safe. Well, no wonder I've been doing all of this. Now, what do I do? What do I do when I want to do with, what do I do with all of that truth, that shift from self-attack to self-honesty? Well, that's everything. It's the difference between emotional intelligence, superficial, and light awareness, and using that as another weapon against yourself and using awareness as the doorway out of the, worst day cycle. Because remember, you can't heal what you refuse to be honest about. You can't change a pattern you're still denying. If you've tried perfection, you've tried more success, you've tried minimizing your pain, none of it worked. So do you see, this is the moment when you try truth. Not in a big way, not something dramatic, not change your whole life kind of thing. Just a tiny little daily, I'm not going to lie to myself about this. I'm going to ask the 3 questions. I'm going to investigate it. I'm going to see the truth. So to help you begin practicing this, I want you to take this framework and apply it to just one area of your life in your journal after this lesson. So, here are the things. I want you to start with, what am I feeling? What's my first memory? Or where do I feel in my body? And what's my earliest memory? All right? And then I want you to look at one area of your life where you feel the void most. And what are you actually feeling about it right now? Okay? Doesn't matter what area, work, relationships, anything. Okay? Finances. But just write down the real feelings about it. Okay? Not what you think you should feel. Don't let the survival persona come over and do the Michael Goggins thing of, no, this is great. I feel great about myself. You can obviously see by his manner and demeanor, he does not like himself. He is filled with internal rage, okay? Don't do that to yourself, okay? Now, then you're going to ask yourself, after using the 3 emotional authenticity questions, what's the rule? What's the story that I learned and I had to put in my head about that feeling? Because you might hear something like, if I say no, I'll disappoint them. Or if I don't carry everything, I'm failing. Maybe it's if I set a boundary, I'm selfish or difficult. All of those are blueprint rules, and they usually sound very black and white and very absolute, like always, never, have to. You can always tell there's shame involved when it's all or nothing thinking and when there's should and could. Whenever you hear yourself saying should or could, you know you're in shame. You know you're in your survival persona. You've detached from your authentic self, and the worst day cycle is running your life. You're in your old emotional blueprint, and you're not adult at all in that moment. So just be aware of that. Adults say, I would have liked to. The child version of us said, I should have. I could have. It demands perfection. That's shame. All right? Now, step 3, just tell the truth about that role right now. Just ask yourself, is this rule actually true in my adult life today, or is this an old survival rule that I learned in my childhood? Maybe the truth is, no, it's not literally true that I'm going to abandon myself if I say I'm at capacity. But my body feels like it is, because that was the rule way back then. That right there is emotional authenticity combined with the authentic self cycle. Because you're not gaslighting yourself and pretending the fear isn't real. You're acknowledging, yeah, my body believes this because of what happened, but it's not the full truth now. Step 4 is just choose one tiny action that honors that feeling instead of abandoning it. So that might just be, I just want to do a great job in this, but I'm worn out. I'm at capacity. Can we just extend the timeline, or, maybe move something off my plate and put it on somebody else's? Or even pausing and saying, can I get back to you? I'll get back to you by the end of the day. So instead of immediately, like autopilot, abandoning yourself with an automatic yes, you just take a micro step towards self-loyalty. That's the emotional authenticity process and method in action, and combining it with the authentic self cycle. It doesn't mean you scream or quit or blow everything up in your life. It just means you get into truth. You're telling the truth about your internal world, and you let the truth be known. And you have, just at the very least, allow it to have a small impact on your external choices. And that's how you begin to soften the void. Because every time you do that, you're just sending your system a brand new message that says, I'm not going to betray you. I'm not going to do it to keep everybody else okay. Now, that might, feel a bit shaky, a bit scary, but I'm not going to let the feelings, I'm going to recognize those feelings are from the past. And I'm not going to allow your feelings to run my life. Okay? Now, over time, your body starts to feel just a little less alone. There's something else that begins to happen that I want you to notice. You probably used your mind to beat yourself up for years. At least you were thinking it was your mind. And you have no problem analyzing yourself to death. Well, emotional authenticity, you can see, isn't about intellectual self-analysis. It's about shifting the tone from the shame-based interrogation into authentic self-curiosity. Nothing's determined. We're investigating. Okay? So instead of what's wrong with me for having these feelings or, reacting this way, it just becomes, what the heck happened to me that makes me feel this way right now? It makes this craziness feel like that's the right thing to do. So instead of I shouldn't feel this way, which is the logical, shame-based, should, there we go, should, I should and could, all right? I got to do more, I should do more, I could do better. All of that shame that you shouldn't be that anymore, it becomes, of course I feel this way. Of course that happened, given what I've lived through. Now, what do I want to do with that and all of that truth? Well, just that shift from self-attack to self-honesty is a massive shift. It's the difference between using awareness as another weapon against yourself and using awareness as the doorway out of the worst day cycle. Because remember, you can't heal what you refuse to be honest about. You can't change a pattern you're still denying. You've been trying perfection. You've tried external validation and external worth through outer trappings of success. And you've tried minimizing your internal pain. Well, this is the moment you try truth. Not in a big piece, because remember, this is a micro course. It's not the full, authentic self-cycle, emotional authenticity method. We're not changing your whole life today. We're just giving you an introduction, simple, daily, little things of, I'm not going to lie to myself about how this feels. Okay? So, just to help you practice this, I just want you to take the framework and apply it to one area of your life in your journal once you finish this lesson. So the questions are going to be, the first one is, in one area of your life, where do you feel the void the most? And what are you actually feeling right now in this moment? Just pick one area about it. What are you feeling about that? Whether it's work or a relationship or a hobby, maybe it's your body or your health or your addictions or your finances or your friendships, whatever it is. Write down the real feelings that you're having, not what you think you should feel or could feel if something else happened. Drop the shame, get into what you really feel, okay? Second, look at the rule and the story that you hear in your mind about that feeling. Write it as clearly as you can. Might sound something like, if you slow down, you'll be rejected, or if you express what you really think and feel, that you'll be abandoned. Or if you aren't the strong one, everything collapses. Or if you open up and get vulnerable, no one will like what they see. Or maybe if you're not successful, you're just absolutely nothing. All right? The third one is this rule actually true in your life? Is it really true? Or do you now recognize it's an old survival rule from your childhood? Again, be honest with yourself. Step one, authentic self-cycle, truth. Maybe it was true because that's how you could survive in childhood way back then, when nobody cared about your needs as a child and you were shamed and dismissed or ignored, and so that rule worked. But is that automatically true in every situation in your adult life today? Where's your body reliving that past instead of responding to the present? Okay? And then fourth, what's one tiny action you can take today or this week that honors what you feel instead of abandoning it? You know, just tiny little things like pausing for 5 minutes to just stand outside, or tell somebody you're tired, or say, let me think about it, or taking 10 minutes to go for a walk. Something different than pushing it all down. All right, so again, you're not looking to blow up your life here. You just have to stop lying to yourself about what you're really feeling and about what you're really doing. So again, as always, I put all the questions for you underneath the video so you can come back to them. And in the next lesson, we're going to get even more practical. I'm going to give you a specific 5-minute daily practice, 3 of them, that you can use to build emotional authenticity into your routine. So again, this, isn't just a concept. Obviously, it's not the full process, but it gives you a little taste very slowly and easy so you can kind of titrate into it and become aware of a new way of looking at your life and how you can go about filling that void. So it becomes something that you're actually living. All right. And that's where that void just starts to slowly and steadily lose its power. But for now, just give yourself permission to tell the truth on the pages, even if you can't quite act on it yet. Just be honest with yourself. That's like the first boundary we have to set. All right. It's a boundary we've never had, is learning how to be honest with ourselves and connected with ourselves. Okay. So this is where you begin to build it. So get started with that, and I'll see you in the next video.